So the title of this series is gonna be the starting story, but what does that mean? What if I told you that this is actually the entire story? That there are some secrets that are too big for a small platform like this? It's true, I am currently in hiding. But there are stories that I cannot bring myself to share, even if it means that I have to disappear. Some truths are just too much for the world to handle. And so, this will be the very last video that you see from me. If you are watching this right now, please do not try to find me. Just remember the message that I am leaving you today. But let us begin at the beginning, shall we? On March 8, 2014, flight MH370 took off like any other flight. The Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, and all seemed to be going well. After takeoff, the plane leveled out at 35,000 feet. There were 239 people on board, including 121 Chinese nationals, 3 Americans, and the crew of 12. Now this flight was important. You see, China was at the time experiencing an economic boom. Hundreds of thousands of its citizens were traveling around the world, and this flight was filled with some of them. They were businessmen and tourists visiting family and friends. Then there was Doug, a retired American couple visiting their adopted homeland. And finally, there were the crew members who had been working hard to keep up with Malaysia Airlines' high standards of service. As the plane cruised through the skies, they engaged in small talk with passengers, served drinks, and made sure that everyone was comfortable. The lucky ones were able to get some sleep before it was time for breakfast. But little did they know that they would never wake up. As the plane approached its destination, the cabin lights turned on, and the crew began preparing for landing. The captain set the autopilot to begin the descent, and then he turned to his co-pilot and said, "All right, we're in the hand of the Lord now." With those chilling words, the two pilots braced themselves for the landing. But as the plane touched down, something went wrong. The crew struggled to control the aircraft, and then suddenly they were thrown into darkness. The lights went out, and the passengers screamed as the plane hit the ground. When emergency services arrived at the scene, they found that the cockpit had been completely destroyed. The two pilots were dead. The rest of the passengers had vanished. Had the plane simply broken apart on impact? Where could the people have gone? How had the pilots died? These questions would haunt the investigators for years. In the days that followed, they searched the area for clues but came up with nothing. But then one day when they were about to give up, they found a piece of debris that looked familiar. It was a piece of the plane's interior, and when they examined it closely, they found that it was from the business class section. This gave them hope that maybe, just maybe, they were still alive. They continued searching, and eventually found a few more pieces of debris from the same part of the plane. All signs pointed towards the same conclusion: the plane had broken apart in mid-air. But how? Investigators scoured over the wreckage and found no evidence of foul play. The plane had simply fallen apart on its own, but that was impossible. Modern planes are built to withstand even the most extreme conditions. So why did this one fall apart? And so the search continued. The investigators looked everywhere, underwater, in the jungle, even in remote areas. They were determined to find the answers, but they were no closer to finding them now than they had been when they started. Even stranger, the pilot's black box had not been found. This was a crucial piece of evidence that could help them determine what caused the crash. Without it, they were in the dark. Was it a technical error, sabotage, or pilot misconduct? They couldn't be sure. Days turned into weeks, and the mystery only deepened. Theories abounded, but no one knew the truth. Then suddenly, a breakthrough. A local resident found a piece of debris on the beach that looked similar to the one found earlier. Could this be another piece of the missing plane? The authorities descended on the area and began searching. They soon found more pieces of debris, and with each new discovery, they got closer to solving the mystery. Eventually, they found enough pieces to reconstruct the entire plane. It was a painstaking process, but slowly, but surely, they began to understand what had happened. On March 8, 2014, flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport bound for Beijing. On board were 239 people, 121 Chinese nationals, 3 Americans, and a multinational crew. The Boeing 777-100R was making its 13th flight that day, and its pilots were Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Michaelmas. Both men were experienced and well-trained. The flight was uneventful until the plane reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. At 1:19 a.m., the pilots contacted air traffic control and informed them that they were making good progress. They then asked for permission to descend to 34,000 feet, and it was granted. But shortly after, at 1:22 a.m., the plane suddenly dropped to 29,000 feet. Air traffic control tried to contact the pilots, but there was no response. They were nowhere to be found. The plane had disappeared without a trace. At 1:27 a.m., the pilots of another plane reported seeing a strange object falling from the sky. They described it as a burning, orange ball streaking across the night sky. The object was heading south at a speed of about 500 miles per hour. At 1:30 a.m., the plane disappeared from secondary radar. But that wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning. Netra, a satellite used for maritime surveillance, picked up a signal from the plane at 1:34 a.m. The signal indicated that the plane was still in the air and heading south. The U.S. military also tracked the plane using its Cobra Dane surveillance system. Their data showed that the plane was on course for the Indian Ocean. With this new information, the search for MH370 began in earnest. Ships and planes were dispatched to the area, and the hunt began. But despite the best efforts of the search teams, no trace of the plane could be found. Days turned into weeks, and the mystery only deepened. The investigators were stumped. They had no idea where the plane could be or what had happened to it. But they were determined to find the answers. They pored over every piece of data, every piece of debris, every witness statement. They were determined to solve this puzzle no matter what. But as time went on, the hope of finding the plane began to fade. The longer the plane remained missing, the less likely it was that the passengers and crew would be found alive. Still, the search continued. The investigators were not giving up. They were determined to solve this mystery once and for all. But little did they know that the answers lay hidden beneath the waves, waiting to be discovered. I don't know about you guys, but that intro was pretty damn suspenseful. Honestly, I might just make the whole video like this. The original plan was to make a 30-minute documentary, but this format feels way better. So yeah, that's how we're starting this series. Also, I should probably mention that none of the things that I am saying here are true. The Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is one of aviation's greatest mysteries. And I wanted to start the series off with a bang. So I created a fictional account of what could have happened on that fateful day. The actual story is just as mysterious and just as suspenseful. And I promise that we'll uncover the truth together. So what do you think happened to MH370? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to hear more about the real story, stay tuned for future installments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.